Hello, welcome back. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how I make sourdough bread from a saved starter. You remember those bread bags that I made months ago back in March? Well, this is why I had to make them. So I've taken the starter out of the fridge. It had been there for about 2 weeks and I brought it up to room temperature and then added some lukewarm, must be lukewarm, not warm water, and stir it around until you can start to see the yeast coming out. And the ratio of water to flour is about 50-50. So it's 8 fluid ounces of water to 8 ounces of flour. So that would be 200 grams of flour to 200 millilitres of water. And once you've mixed that all in quite well, put it to sponge for the first time. And keep your tea towel moist all the way through, so you might have to re-wet it several times. After 2 days, this is what it looks like. And that's ready to go. You might need to leave it a little bit longer. That won't do it any harm. And then add another 6 fluid ounces of water and then and then 8 ounces of flour. Because you've started off with a dough rather than just making a normal starter, you've got to adjust it. So then I'm going to put this to sponge again. And then after another day, so 24 hours, this is what mine looked like. It's very active. You can see the bubbles. And now I'm just going to add the flour and the salt. So it's just enough flour to make it into a usable dough. You're going to have to just go by eye and what it feels like. And when it turns into a sort of a soft dough, you'll realise that's the sort of right ratio. It needs to be soft, not firm like a kind of farmhouse loaf. And then I decided to use the hand mixer with the dough hooks on. And again, this will probably take between 5 and 7 minutes with a mixer, or even kneading by hand. But you can tell when it starts to go really stringy, and when you're mixing it, it starts to come away from the side of the bowl. And put that to prove for a couple of hours. We ran out of time, so we had to put it in the fridge overnight. It won't do any harm at all. It'll just sort of hold it at that point, and then you need to bring it back up to room temperature. So here it is the next day, and you can tell it's risen to twice the height. You need to use a bowl with a tea towel, clean tea towel, flour it really well, and prepare a tub for putting your offcut in. And that's just olive oil in that tub. And then on a well-floured surface, tip out all of your lovely sourdough out of the bowl. It is very stringy and very floppy. So make sure you've got plenty of flour. You're not going to work it all in. You don't want it to get stuck to the table either. Flour your hands and then lightly work the dough, so you're knocking it back and doing a little extra knead. And then once it's into a reasonable shape and it's got good elasticity, you need to cut off a piece. I do it by eye now, but 150 grams to 200 grams is about right. And then pop that in your tub and stick it in the fridge till the next time you want to make a loaf of bread. Then with the rest of the dough, keep working it around till you start to get some tension. And you can see that it makes a nice dough ball. And it's quite smooth. If you've ever made bread before, you'll know what it's supposed to feel like. Cover it with a damp tea towel and leave it to rise. Which might take, the first time you use a starter, it can take as long as 8 hours, but mine's down to about 2. Then use the bottom half of a Pyrex casserole dish. You can use a shallower one if you like, and invert the bowl onto it take the bowl off and gently take away your floured tea towel. Now at this point, be really careful. If it does stick, just gently peel it away. Don't pull it because your loaf will collapse. We don't want that. Then put a little bit of flour over the top if there's any patches that have gone a bit dry. And then with a very sharp knife, slash the top a couple of times. And it's got to be really sharp. Don't drag it. Again, you could collapse your loaf. Then invert the Pyrex bowl over the top. That's the one I use to rise the loaf in. And pop it into a really hot oven, as hot as your domestic oven can go, which is usually 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 240 degrees centigrade. And then bake that for, I do it for about 50 minutes steaming under the bowl. And then I'll take the bowl off, turn the oven down to 190 degrees and then bake it for a further 20 minutes. You can tell when it's done if you take it out and tap the bottom. It should sound hollow. If it doesn't sound hollow, put it back in the oven out of the bowl and just bake it for another 5 minutes and then cool it down. Again, we ran out of time, so this is the next morning with the sourdough. It was cool and we decided to slice it open, and doesn't it look yummy? And it was delicious. So if you don't like to have a go at making sourdough, I've started this making video from the point of taking your existing starter out of the fridge. I didn't show you the process of making a starter because it can take 10 days and sometimes it goes wrong, and I already had an existing starter and I've been asked a few times, how do you do it if you've got some saved dough? I use a book, the bread book, by Linda Collister and Anthony somebody other. I'll put the link in the description. And it's the French sourdough recipe, and there's really clear instructions in there of how to make a starter. And if you follow those instructions, and actually if you just read through it, it's a really good bread book, loads of lovely recipes. But yeah, just have a go. Thanks for joining me. If you like this sort of thing, please consider subscribing to my channel.